6 months passed after humanity left the Galactic Assembly. Life continued as it always had. Trade ships moved between worlds. Diplomats argued about borders and resources. The Assembly held its meetings and made its decisions, confident that nothing important had really changed. On the frontier world of Thessar Prime, Consul Meridax began his day like any other. He was a Velthari, his crystalline body glowing with soft blue light. He had governed this world for 300 years. In all that time, nothing truly dangerous had ever happened. His aide, a younger Velthari named Tessix, entered the chamber with the morning reports. "Trade disputes with the Korath merchants," Tessix said, reading from his tablet. "A minor earthquake in the southern continent. The Morathi ambassador is complaining about the food again." Meridax waved a tendril in dismissal. "Handle them as you see fit." "There is one more thing, Consul," Tessix hesitated. "We have lost contact with Outpost 17. "Equipment failure," Meridax said. "Send a repair drone." "We did, Consul. The drone went silent as well, as did the backup drone, and the scout ship we sent to investigate." Meridax stopped. He turned to face his aide fully. Something cold moved through his crystal form. "When did this happen?" "Over the past 3 days, Consul. I thought it was merely technical problems at first, but the scout ship was crewed by experienced officers. They should have reported back within hours." Meridax moved to his communication terminal. He entered commands and pulled up a display of the region around Thessar Prime. Outpost 17 was a small station on the edge of the outer reach. Beyond it lay only darkness and the distant light of other galaxies. The outpost signal was gone. Just empty static where there should have been the steady pulse of a functioning station. "Contact the Assembly," Meridax ordered. "Inform them of the situation, and contact our neighbors. I want to know if anyone else has experienced similar problems." He did not know it then, but he had just witnessed the first whisper of the storm that would nearly destroy everything. Far away, in human space, Admiral Katie Moore already knew what was happening. She stood in the command center of her flagship, the Vigilant Dawn, and studied the same reports with very different eyes. "The Kreth are moving faster than we expected," said Commander Chris Douglas. He was her tactical officer, a tall man with dark skin and careful eyes. He had served with Katie for 15 years. She trusted him completely. "Show me," Katie said. Chris brought up a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked locations where contact had been lost. There were dozens of them now, spreading outward from the outer reach like blood from a wound. 3 assembly outposts confirmed destroyed, Chris said. 7 more are dark. The pattern matches what we saw 70 years ago during the first Kreth incursion. Katie studied the map in silence. She remembered the stories her grandmother had told her about the first Kreth attack. Her grandmother had lost her husband in that battle. He had been aboard one of the ships that rammed the Harvester to bring it down. "How long until they reach major assembly worlds?" Katie asked. "At current speed, maybe 6 months. But they get faster as they feed. If they consume enough biomass, it could be 3 months, maybe less." Lieutenant Maria Santos looked up from her communication station. She was young, barely 30, with quick hands and a sharp mind. "Admiral, should we send a warning to the Assembly?" She thought about all the times humanity had tried to warn the Assembly about the Kreth. She thought about the dismissals, the mockery, the patronizing lectures about how humans were too young to understand real threats. "Would they believe us?" she asked. No one answered. They all knew the truth. "Continue monitoring," Katie ordered. "Strengthen our border defenses. If the Kreth finish with the Assembly and turn toward human space, we need to be ready." "And the Assembly?" Chris asked quietly. Katie's jaw tightened. "They made their choice. They have been making that choice for 60 years. We cannot save people who refuse to believe they need saving." She turned back to the map. The red dots were spreading. Each one represented thousands, maybe millions of lives, being consumed by creatures that knew nothing of mercy or negotiation. Part of her wanted to help anyway. Part of her remembered that most assembly citizens were innocent people who had nothing to do with their government's arrogance. They were farmers and teachers and children who had never looked down on humans, who had never refused to listen. But she also remembered the faces of the human crews who had died defending assembly borders for 60 years. She remembered the petitions that had been ignored, the warnings that had been dismissed, the sacrifices that had been forgotten. "Get me a secure channel to Earth," she said finally. "Ambassador Carter needs to know what is happening." On Earth, Daniel Carter received the news in his study. It was late at night. Rain fell against the windows of his home in Geneva. His daughter, Dr. Lisa Carter, sat across from him, her face pale in the light of the communication screen. "How bad is it?" Lisa asked. "Bad," Daniel replied, "and getting worse." Lisa was a xenobiologist. She had spent her career studying the Kreth, working with the few samples and records humanity had recovered from the first incursion. She knew better than most what these creatures were capable of. "The assembly will have to respond now," she said. "They cannot ignore this. You would be surprised what people can ignore when they are determined not to see the truth." Daniel stood and walked to the window. The rain made everything blurry, like a dream that was turning into a nightmare. 70 years ago, we barely survived one Kreth harvester, he said. We lost 12,000 people and half our fleet. Now there are hundreds of harvesters out there, maybe thousands, and the assembly has no real military to speak of. Will we help them? Daniel did not answer immediately. He watched the rain and thought about all the years he had spent trying to build bridges with the assembly. All the patience. All the bitter disappointments. "I do not know," he admitted. "I truly do not know. Part of me says we should. They are living beings, whatever their faults. But another part remembers every time they refused to listen. Every time they called us primitive and paranoid. Every time they let human soldiers die, defending their borders, while they debated whether we were worthy of equal standing." Lisa stood and joined him at the window. "The assembly will reach out to us eventually," she said. "When things get bad enough, they will have no choice." "Yes," Daniel agreed. "And when they do, we will have to decide what kind of species we want to be. Do we let them die because they would have let us die? Or do we save them anyway, because that is who we are?" And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Kreth continued their slow, hungry advance toward the heart of galactic civilization. The assembly had made their choice long ago. Now they would live with the consequences, or die with them. The Kreth came not as an army, but as a swarm. They emerged from the darkness between galaxies like nightmares made real. Their ships were not made of metal and circuits like the vessels of civilized species. They were alive. Vast organic masses, each one miles across, covered in pulsing membranes and reaching tendrils. They had no flags, no markings, no way to tell one from another. They were all part of the same hungry intelligence. They did not send messages. They did not demand surrender. They simply arrived and began to feed. Thessar Prime fell in 18 hours. Consul Meridax watched from his tower as the sky turned dark with Kreth harvesters. The beautiful crystal cities of his people, structures that had stood for 10,000 years, crumbled under the assault. Millions of Velthari were gathered by tentacles and pulled into the massive organic ships, their bodies broken down into raw material. He managed to send one final message before the end. Just a single word, repeated over and over. "Please." Then the tower fell, and Consul Meridax was no more. News of the destruction spread across the galaxy like fire. The assembly convened an emergency session for the first time in living memory. Delegates gathered not in the Grand Crystal Hall, but in a secure bunker deep within the station. Fear filled the air like a physical presence. Thessar Prime is gone, announced the assembly speaker. He was an ancient Korath named Elder Gorvan. His scales faded to dull gray with age. His voice shook as he spoke. The entire world, 12 billion Velthari, consumed. Silence fell over the chamber. Some delegates wept. Others sat in stunned disbelief. The Velthari themselves were notably fewer in number. Many of their representatives had been on Thessar Prime when it fell. "We must contact the humans," said Representative Selene of the Morathi. She was a nervous creature with 12 arms that never stopped moving. "They warned us about this. They knew these creatures existed. They fought them before." "The humans abandoned us," countered Delegate Vestrix, the new leader of the Velthari delegation. He was young for his kind, barely 1,000 years old, and filled with bitter anger. "They left when we needed them most. How do we know they are not behind this attack?" "Behind it?" Selene's voice rose with disbelief. "The humans lost an entire colony to these things before they even knew we existed. They spent 60 years trying to warn us. We refused to listen." "Enough," Elder Gorvan said heavily. "We can debate blame later. Right now we must face reality. What forces do we have to defend against this threat?" The military commander of the assembly, a Korath general named Thrace, stepped forward. His scales were dark green, his eyes tired. "Very little," he admitted. "The assembly has maintained only token military forces for millennia. Our security has always relied on diplomacy and isolation, and on the human fleets that patrolled the outer reach. Those fleets are gone," Vestrix said bitterly. "Yes, because we told them to leave. Because we refused to believe there was any threat worth defending against." General Thrace let those words hang in the air. "We have perhaps 50 warships that could be called combat-ready. Against a Kreth swarm of this size, that is nothing." "Then we have no choice," Selene said. "We must contact Earth. We must ask for help." "And if they refuse?" Vestrix demanded. "Then we die," Selene replied simply. "All of us. Every species in the assembly. Everything we have built over 12,000 years, gone." The vote was taken. It was not unanimous. The Velthari abstained, their pride too wounded to ask humans for anything. A message would be sent to Earth, asking for aid. Elder Gorvan himself composed the message. He chose his words carefully, knowing that the survival of galactic civilization might depend on them. "To the people of Earth and their representatives, the Galactic Assembly formally requests your assistance in the face of an existential threat. The creatures you call the Kreth have entered Assembly space in overwhelming numbers. Our forces are insufficient to stop them. Without help, we will be destroyed. Whatever past disagreements have existed between our peoples, we ask you to set them aside for the sake of all sentient life. Please help us." The message was sent, then they waited. In the city of Geneva, Daniel Carter received the transmission in his office. Katie Moore was there via holographic link from the Vigilant Dawn. Lisa Carter stood by the window, her arms crossed. "They are begging," Katie said flatly. "After everything they said and did, they are begging us to save them." "Can you blame them?" Lisa asked. "They are watching their civilization being eaten alive. I can blame them for not listening when we tried to prevent this. I can blame them for every human soldier who died defending their borders, while they debated whether we were worthy of basic respect." Daniel held up his hand for silence. He read the message again, slowly, feeling the weight of every word. "The question is not whether we blame them," he said finally. "The question is what we do now." "What are our options?" Lisa asked. Katie answered. "We can do nothing. Let the Kreth consume the assembly. By our calculations, that buys us about 2 years to prepare our defenses before the swarm turns toward human space. And then? And then we fight alone, with no allies, against a Kreth force that has tripled in size from feeding on the assembly's biomass. We might win, but it would cost us everything." What is the other option? Daniel asked. We help them. We send our fleets to fight the Kreth now while they are still relatively weak. We save the assembly, or what is left of it. We lose ships and people in the process. But if we win, we have allies for the fight ahead. The Kreth will not stop coming just because we beat them once. Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, billions of humans were living their lives, unaware of the decision being made in this room. Children were playing. Parents were working. Old people were telling stories to young ones. They were all counting on him to make the right choice. 60 years ago, we joined the assembly hoping to find partners, Daniel said quietly. We found something else instead. We found arrogance and dismissal and contempt. They never believed we had anything to offer. He turned back to face Katie and Lisa. But that is not who we are. We do not let billions of people die because their leaders were fools. We do not stand by and watch civilizations burn because they did not show us the respect we deserved. Dad, Lisa said softly. Send a reply, Daniel told Katie. Tell them we will help. But make it clear that this time things will be different. This time they will listen. This time we stand as equals or not at all. Katie nodded slowly. There was something in her eyes that might have been approval. I will prepare the fleet, she said. It is time to show the galaxy what humans can do. The message was sent. The fleets began to move. And somewhere in the darkness, the Kreth continued their endless feast, unaware that the prey they had dismissed as insignificant was about to become their greatest enemy. Admiral Katie Moore stood on the bridge of the Vigilant Dawn and watched her fleet assemble. 300 warships gathered in the darkness of space, their running lights blinking like stars brought to life. Each ship had been designed with a single purpose. Each crew had trained for this moment their entire careers. They were going to war. Commander Chris Douglas approached with a datapad. His face was serious, as it always was before battle. All ships report ready, Admiral. The fleet will reach assembly space in 14 hours. Casualty projections? Chris hesitated. That hesitation told Katie everything she needed to know. Based on what we know about Kreth numbers and tactics, we are looking at 30 to 40% losses. Maybe more. Katie nodded slowly. 30 to 40%. That meant 100 ships, thousands of lives, husbands and wives who would never come home, children who would grow up without parents. And if we do not fight, the assembly falls within 6 months. The Kreth numbers triple. When they turn toward human space, we face 60 to 70% losses, possibly total defeat. Then the math is simple. Yes, Admiral, the math is simple. Katie walked to the viewport and looked out at her fleet. She thought about all the people aboard those ships. She knew many of them by name. She had promoted some of them. She had been to their weddings, met their families, shared meals with them during long patrols. Now she was leading them to die. Admiral, Maria Santos called from her station. Incoming message from the assembly. Elder Gorvan is requesting to speak with you directly. Put him through. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the ancient Korath's tired face. His scale seemed even duller than before. His eyes held a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. Admiral Moore, I wish to speak with you before you arrive, to thank you personally for what you are doing. Save your thanks until the battle is won, Katie replied. We may not succeed. But you are trying. After everything we did, after how we treated your people, you are still coming to save us. Gorvan's voice cracked slightly. I do not understand why. Katie considered her answer carefully. 70 years ago, the Kreth destroyed a human colony. 12,000 people died. We had done nothing to provoke the attack. We did not even know the Kreth existed. They killed us, simply because we were there. She paused, remembering the stories her grandmother had told her. When we brought that story to the assembly, you called us liars. You said we were exaggerating to seem more important. You dismissed our warnings for 60 years. You let our soldiers die defending your borders while you debated whether we were worthy of equal standing. Gorvin lowered his head. I know, I am sorry. I do not need your apology. What I need is for you to understand something. Katie leaned forward. We are not coming to save you because you deserve it. We are coming because letting billions of people die is not who we are. We are coming because the Kreth are a threat to all life, not just assembly life. And we are coming because when this is over, we intend to build something new, something better than what existed before. What do you mean? No more second-class membership. No more being treated like children by species who have simply been around longer. Humanity will have an equal voice in galactic affairs, or there will be no galactic affairs. The old way of doing things ends here. Gorvin was silent for a long moment. You have every right to demand such things, he said finally. And I will support you. Whatever happens, I will make sure the Assembly understands what we owe humanity. See that you do. The connection ended. Katie turned back to find Chris watching her with something like pride in his eyes. That was well said, Admiral. It needed to be said. Our people need to know why they are fighting, not for the Assembly, for the future we are going to build. Hours passed. The fleet moved through slipspace toward Assembly territory. On every ship, crews made final preparations. Weapons were checked, shields were tested, letters home were written and stored, to be delivered only if the sender did not return. On the vigilant dawn, Lieutenant Ben Torres gathered his strike-wing pilots in the ready room. He was young for his rank, only 35, but he had earned his position through skill and courage. Listen up, he told his pilots. When we arrive, we will be facing the largest hostile force any human fleet has ever encountered. The Kreth do not surrender. They do not negotiate. They do not stop until they or their enemy is dead. He looked at their faces. Some were scared. Some were determined. All were ready. But here is what the Kreth do not understand. They think size and numbers are all that matter. They think consuming worlds makes them strong. They are wrong. Strength is not about how much you can destroy. Strength is about how much you are willing to sacrifice to protect what matters. Ben activated a holographic display showing the Marathi homeworld. Red markers indicated Kreth positions. 12 billion Marathi are depending on us. They have never met us. They do not know our names, but we are going to save them anyway, because that is what humans do. We protect people. Even people who don't deserve it. Even people who would never do the same for us. He shut off the display. Get some rest. We arrive in 6 hours. When we get there, I want every pilot ready to fly like their lives depend on it. Because they do. Dismissed. The pilots filed out. Ben stayed behind, looking at the empty room. He thought about his father, who had served in the fleet before him. His grandfather, who had fought in the first Kreth incursion. His family had always been warriors, always willing to stand between innocent people and the things that wanted to hurt them. Now it was his turn. He pulled out a small photograph, his wife and daughter, smiling at the camera on a beach somewhere warm. He had not seen them in 3 months. If things went badly tomorrow, he might never see them again. I will come home, he whispered to the photograph. I promise. But he knew it was a promise he might not be able to keep. On the bridge, Katie received a final update from Earth. Daniel Carter's face appeared on her screen. The government has approved full authorization for Operation Homecoming, Daniel said. Whatever you need, you will have. Additional ships are being prepared to follow as quickly as possible. Thank you, Ambassador. Katie, Daniel's voice softened. Bring as many of them home as you can. I will do my best. I know you will. Good luck. The connection ended. Katie looked around at her bridge crew, The men and women who had served with her for years. They were afraid. She could see it in their eyes. But they were also ready. "All hands," she announced over the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Moore. In a few hours we will engage the enemy. Some of us will not survive. But those who do will be able to say they fought for something that mattered. They fought for the future. They fought for every living being in this galaxy who deserves a chance to see tomorrow." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I am proud to serve with you, all of you. Now, let us show the Kreth why humanity survived." The fleet emerged from slipspace above the Marathi homeworld. The sky was filled with Kreth harvesters, hundreds of them, turning toward the new arrivals like predators sensing prey. Katie Moore looked at the enemy and felt no fear, only determination. "All ships," she ordered calmly, "weapons free, engage the enemy." The battle for the galaxy had begun. The Marathi homeworld had 12 moons. From the surface, citizens looked up and saw fire blooming across all of them. The battle had begun, and the sky itself seemed to burn. Admiral Katie Moore stood at the center of her command bridge, calm as stone, while chaos raged around her. Tactical displays showed the positions of hundreds of ships. Communications officers shouted updates. Damage reports came in faster than anyone could process them. "The Kreth are focusing on our left flank," Chris Douglas reported. "Cruiser Group 7 is taking heavy casualties. Reinforce with Destroyer Squadron 3. Tell them to hold the line at any cost." "Admiral, Squadron 3 is already engaged with a harvester on the right." "Then tell them to disengage and move. The left flank is more important right now." Katie made decisions faster than thought. Years of training, years of simulations, years of studying the first Kreth incursion had prepared her for this moment. She knew how the Kreth fought. She knew their weaknesses, and she knew that victory would come down to willpower as much as firepower. The Kreth attacked in waves. Each harvester was a living weapon, capable of absorbing tremendous damage while lashing out with organic weapons that could tear through starship hulls. They felt no fear, no hesitation, no doubt. They simply advanced, consumed, and advanced again. But humans were different. Lieutenant Ben Torres led his strike wing directly into the heart of the swarm. His ship was small, fast, and packed with enough explosives to crack a harvester's shell. "All pilots follow my lead," he ordered. "We hit them where they least expect it, inside their formation." "That is suicide," one pilot responded. "Maybe, but the cruisers cannot penetrate their outer defenses. Now, follow me, or stay behind. Your choice." 20 pilots followed him. They dove into the swarm like needles through flesh, dodging tentacles and organic projectiles, weaving between harvesters that dwarfed their tiny ships 1,000 times over. Ben found his target, a harvester larger than the others, coordinating the attack on the left flank. He could see smaller ships docking with it, sharing information like neurons in a vast brain. "That one," he said. "If we take it out, we disrupt their coordination." He accelerated toward the harvester's core, the soft pulsing center where its vital organs lay. Tentacles reached for him. He rolled, twisted, pushed his ship beyond its design limits. Warning lights flashed. Alarms screamed. He did not stop. At the last moment, Ben armed his payload and ejected from his ship. The small vessel continued forward, slamming into the harvester's core, and detonating with enough force to vaporize a small moon. The harvester died. The left flank's coordination shattered. Human cruisers pushed forward through the gap. Ben floated in space, his emergency beacon pulsing, waiting for rescue. He watched the battle rage around him and hoped his sacrifice had been worth it. Hours passed. The fight continued. On the vigilant dawn, Katie tracked the battle's progress with growing exhaustion. They were winning. Slowly, painfully, at terrible cost, but winning. The Creth numbers were dropping faster than human numbers. The swarm was beginning to break apart. "Admiral," Maria Santos called out, "the Creth are retreating. They are pulling back toward the outer system." Katie looked at the tactical display. The massive organic ships were disengaging, fleeing back toward the darkness from which they had come. "Do not pursue," Katie ordered. "Let them go. Our priority is search and rescue. Find our people." "And the Creth? They will be back someday, but not today. Today they learned something they never expected. Today they learned that humans do not give up." The battle of the Morathi homeworld was over. The cost had been terrible. 47 human ships destroyed, 8,000 men and women dead, dozens more wounded, missing, or floating in escape pods waiting for rescue. But the assembly had survived. 3 months later, a ceremony was held on the rebuilt assembly station. The grand crystal hall had been repaired, though scars remained visible in the walls and floor. Representatives from all surviving species gathered to witness something that had never happened before in 12,000 years of assembly history. Daniel Carter, older now and walking with a cane, entered the hall with Admiral Katie Moore at his side. Behind them came the surviving senior officers of the fleet. Chris Douglas, Maria Santos, Ben Torres, his arms still in a sling from his rescue. Elder Gorvan waited at the central platform. Around him stood representatives from every assembly species. The Morathi clicked their arms in solemn greeting. The Korath bowed their heavy heads. Even the Velthari, or what remained of them, inclined their crystalline forms in respect. "Today," Gorvan announced, his voice carrying through the silent hall, "the Galactic Assembly welcomes humanity, not as provisional members, not as junior partners, but as equal architects of our shared future." He turned to Daniel and extended his scaled hand. "Ambassador Carter, please accept this token of our gratitude and our shame. We should have listened. We should have trusted. We did neither, and billions paid the price for our arrogance. No words can undo what has happened. But perhaps together we can build something worthy of those who sacrificed everything to give us this chance." Daniel took Gorvan's hand and shook it firmly. 60 years ago, I came to this assembly hoping to find wisdom," Daniel said. "I found something else instead. Pride, dismissal, the certainty that age equals superiority." He looked out at the assembled delegates. "I am not here for revenge. I am not here to lecture you about your mistakes. You know what you did. You will live with that knowledge forever." Daniel paused, gathering his thoughts. "I am here because humanity believes in something the assembly forgot long ago. We believe that strength comes not from standing above others, but from standing beside them. We believe that wisdom is not the same as age, and we believe that every species, no matter how young or how different, has something valuable to offer." He straightened his old spine and spoke with all the conviction he had gathered over a lifetime. "The Creth will return. They always do, and when they come back, they will find something they did not expect. Not a collection of squabbling species, not an assembly divided by pride and prejudice. They will find a union, a partnership, a family of worlds that has learned, finally, that survival requires more than technology and numbers. It requires trust." Katie stepped forward to stand beside Daniel. "Humanity will hold the line," she said. "We always have. But this time we will not hold it alone. This time we hold it together. And together we will show the darkness that the light of civilization cannot be extinguished." The hall erupted in applause. Others simply stood in solemn respect. Outside the station, the human fleet maintained its vigilant watch. Ships patrolled the borders, their sensors reaching into the darkness, searching for any sign of returning danger. Ben Torres stood at a viewport on one of those ships, looking out at the stars. His arm ached where the bones were still healing. His body was tired, but his heart was full. "Was it worth it?" Maria Santos asked, coming to stand beside him. "All those ships, all those people, was it worth saving species who spent 60 years telling us we were not good enough?" Ben thought about the question for a long moment. "My grandfather fought in the First HFY War," he said finally. "He used to tell me that being a hero was not about glory or recognition. It was about doing the right thing, even when no one asked you to. Even when no one would thank you for it." He turned to face Maria. "We did not save the assembly because they deserved it. We saved them because that is who we are. And now, because of what we did, the galaxy has a chance. Every child born on every world has a future because humans chose to fight for strangers." Maria nodded slowly. "That sounds like something worth fighting for." "It is," Ben agreed. "It always has been." In the darkness between galaxies, the Kreth nursed their wounds and watched. They had tasted defeat for the first time in their ancient existence. They had encountered a prey species that refused to surrender, refused to run, refused to die. They would learn, they would adapt, they would return. But when they did, humanity would be waiting, and this time, humanity would not be alone. The stars burned cold and bright across the endless night. And somewhere, on 1,000 different worlds, children looked up at those stars and dreamed of the future that brave humans had given them. A future worth fighting for. A future worth dying for. A future that would last forever. The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was a place of wonder. Light from 1,000 stars poured through crystal walls. Floating platforms carried delegates from 17 different species across the vast chamber. For 12,000 years, this place had been the center of galactic civilization. Wars had ended here. Treaties had been signed. The future of countless worlds had been decided within these ancient walls. Daniel Carter stood on the human platform and felt very small. He was 63 years old. His hair had turned silver many years ago. Lines marked his face from decades of smiling, frowning, and worrying about things that never seemed to get better. He had served as Earth's ambassador to the Assembly for 30 years. In all that time, nothing had really changed. The Velthari delegate was speaking. His name was Consul Varric, and he was made entirely of living crystal. Light passed through his body and came out in rainbow colors. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. He was beautiful and ancient, and completely certain that he was right about everything. "The human proposal is noted," Varric said. His tone made it clear that being noted was not the same as being taken seriously. However, the Assembly sees no reason to increase military presence in the Outer Reach. We have monitored those regions for millennia. There is nothing there that requires such extreme measures. Daniel stepped forward. Behind him stood Admiral Katie Moore, commander of the Human Defense Fleet. She was 51 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She kept her face perfectly still, but Daniel could feel her anger like heat from a fire. "Consul Varric," Daniel said, keeping his voice calm. "In the past 18 months, we have lost contact with 7 outposts in the Outer Reach. 3 human scout ships have disappeared without a trace. Our deep space sensors have detected energy signatures that match nothing in our databases. Something is out there." "Your sensors are new," Varric replied. "Your species has been traveling between stars for less than 200 years. You see shadows and call them monsters. This is understandable for a young race. But the Assembly cannot make decisions based on human fear." A ripple of agreement passed through the chamber. The Marathi delegates clicked their many arms in approval. The Korath representative nodded his heavy-scaled head. Even the smaller species, the ones who usually stayed quiet, seemed to agree with the Velthari. Daniel had seen this before. He had seen it 100 times. Whenever humans brought concerns to the assembly, the response was always the same. You are too young. You do not understand. Let the elder races handle these matters. We have presented evidence, Daniel said. Sensor logs, communication intercepts, the testimonies of the few survivors we have recovered. What more do you need? We need perspective, Varric answered. Something your species lacks. You have been part of this assembly for 60 years. We have guided this galaxy for 12,000. When you have watched civilizations rise and fall, when you have seen empires turn to dust, then perhaps you will understand that not every shadow hides a threat. Katie Moore made a small sound. Daniel knew that sound. It meant she was close to saying something she would regret. He held up his hand slightly, asking her to wait. I see, Daniel said quietly. Then humanity has nothing more to offer this assembly. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. It was a simple thing, just a data chip in a protective case, but what it contained would change everything. This is humanity's formal notice of withdrawal from the Galactic Assembly, Daniel announced. Effective immediately. The chamber went silent. The constant background noise of translation devices and whispered conversations stopped completely. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Varric laughed. It was a strange sound, like crystals breaking. You cannot be serious, he said. Withdrawal? Where would you go? What would you do? Humanity needs the assembly. You need our technology, our trade routes, our protection. We needed partnership, Daniel replied. We needed allies who would listen when we warned them of danger. We did not find those things here. He turned to face the entire chamber. Hundreds of alien eyes looked back at him. Some showed confusion. Some showed amusement. A few, very few, showed something that might have been concern. Humanity will withdraw our fleets from the outer reach within 3 standard days, Daniel announced. We will close our borders to assembly traffic. Our trade agreements are hereby suspended pending renegotiation. We wish you all well. He stepped back from the platform's edge. Katie Moore fell into step beside him as they walked toward the exit. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Ambassador Carter, Varric called out, you are making a terrible mistake. When you come crawling back begging for readmission, the terms will not be so favorable. Daniel stopped. He did not turn around. Remember this moment, Consul, he said. Remember what you said and what you refused to believe, because when the darkness comes for you, and it will come, I want you to remember that we tried to warn you. He walked out of the chamber without another word. Katie and a young aide named Ryan Peters followed close behind. The doors closed with a sound like a tomb being sealed. In the corridor outside, Ryan could not contain himself any longer. Sir, are we really leaving? Are we really abandoning the outer reach? We are not abandoning anything, Katie said. Her voice was hard. We are falling back to positions we can actually defend. Let the assembly guard their own borders. They have been telling us for 60 years that they don't need our help. Let them prove it. Daniel said nothing. He kept walking, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He thought about the first Kreth attack, 70 years ago. He had been a child then, but he remembered the news reports. He remembered his mother crying. He remembered the images of the destroyed colony. 12,000 people reduced to nothing but ash and bone. Humanity had fought the Kreth then. They had thrown everything they had at a single harvester ship, and barely won. The victory had cost them dearly, and the assembly had called it exaggeration. They had said humans were telling stories to seem more important than they were. Now the Kreth were coming back. Daniel was certain of it. The signs were all there for anyone willing to see them. But the assembly refused to see. They were too old, too proud, too certain of their own wisdom. Daniel reached the docking bay where the human shuttle waited. He paused at the entrance and looked back one last time at the beautiful crystal halls of the assembly station. "Goodbye," he whispered. "I hope you survive what is coming. I truly do." But in his heart, he knew they probably would not.